Welcome to TheSystem.ca, the art and science of coaching, providing innovative information on the speed, power, recovery, wellness, strength, and conditioning for both athletes and active individuals.
I'm always born ready, buddy. Born ready.
Okay. I want to welcome today's guest. Today's guest is Mark McKoy. And for those who don't know, Mark was a world champion hurdler. He won the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games. And I believe you're a world record holder. Is that correct?
I am. I said a few. I still have one from 1986. It's been a while.
Oh, all right. Okay. And so I always considered Mark to be a student of the sport. And I remember seeing you at York University one time, and you were doing tempo, going up and down the track there, doing push-ups in one end, sit-ups in the other end, and then you'd run up and down. And I mean, you haven't really changed, in my opinion, in terms of your physicality from what I saw you then to current today. So
that's what I'm doing. The same thing.
Yeah, hats off to you for maintaining your for shape, because I know a lot of athletes, all that, once they kind of leave competitive sport, they kind of go to the wayside. I'm not sure why, but I think there's a number of factorial things. It's not part of our discussion, but maybe one day we can talk about that. But anyway, so I want to get into a couple of things here in terms of how you had a couple of coaches, if I remember. I know you worked a little bit with Charlie, but not too much. But your main coach was Malcolm Arnold, and I'm trying to give the readers. I know Charlie's passed, God bless him, but everybody has some wisdom, I believe, and I think that you need to sort of find the best in people and take that, and then overlook the flaws if there's any there, right? So give me an idea what your experience was like with training with Charlie, and then also with Malcolm.
Yeah, sure. Like, I was very fortunate. I always tell people, like, there's one thing to be blessed with certain genes. Obviously, you need that, but it's much more than that. So I've always, like you said, been a student, and I've always been trying to learn things as I go. Always did. Don't know where I got that from. Probably my dad. Rest his soul. So I learned from coaches all over the world, and I just had a very simple philosophy. And as you said, I worked with Charlie for a little while, off and on. Worked with Malcolm much longer. But in between that, I went down to the States because my simple philosophy was, if I wanted to be the best, I just go where the best are training. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship in the States, and fortunate enough to, or unfortunate enough, whatever you wanted to look at it, to be in the same conference as a guy named Ronaldo Nehemiah, who was a world record holder at the time.
Right.
And I worked with him. Well, I got a program from Ronaldo, and I worked with his coach for a while, and that set me on a path to the successes that I've had. So I learned a little bit from all the coaches along the way. A couple of coaches down in the States, went over to Europe to train for a while, and then finally landed on who I consider the best hurdle coach, Malcolm Arnold.
Right. I was actually reading some stuff on him. I heard about him through when I was my chats with Ben a little bit, because I think Ben had some interaction with him as well. I'm not sure, but anyways, so I did some research on him, and pretty interesting guy, pretty wide. Like he kind of strikes me kind of like one of the guru in the top of the mountain kind of thing, like he would say, okay, yeah, this is not bad too, but this might be better, and it's more simplistic in one sense. So which kind of leads me to my next question. The expression simplicity is complexity in reverse, right? Tell me how you applied this to your training, and in respect to, like, say, there's so many things. I see nowadays, functional training, all this kind of stuff, which I'm not saying no to it. So don't, anybody out there, who does this stuff, don't start sending me emails, because I'm not a hater. I'm the middle. I use the expression, you can go to the extremes, but you got to come back to the middle. And so tell me what you think, how'd you apply this, and if you applied it to your training?
back when you saw us doing the running back, all this HIIT training and all these core training, and we used to do this stuff back in the 70s and 80s, and there was no name for it. We just did it.
Right.
And like I said, I think the reason that I've been able to maintain my fitness at this age is I do the same stuff. All these things come and go. All these fads come and go. All these diets come and go. But, there's getting back to the basics. And that's what Malcolm was great at. Most people didn't like training with us because we trained hard. Obviously, you can't get to that level without training hard.
Sure.
But it was so monotonous and boring that people just left. It's like, well, you guys train hard, but it's just so boring. Like you just do the same thing over and over again. It's like, yeah, that's what it takes. Most people aren't willing to do that. So none of the training that we've done over the past 40 years has changed that much. People are just trying to make money off it by giving names to it. Functional training. Well, functional training is just doing what you do every day. Like you don't.
Go ahead. Keep going. I'm laughing inside, but yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
And so yeah, come give me the flack, because you don't like the flack. I'll argue with you all day long because you know what? I got a gold medal and you don't. So shut the fuck up. So, and I'm still in shape, and I'm better than you, and everything else that goes along with it. So,
I like to. I think you had a really key word there, and this is one of the things I think in this day and age, and I think partially is because like when you and I grew up, because we were about the same age, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library, or you went to Kohl's. Remember Kohl's bookstore? And you bought a book maybe, and then you read it, and then you made notes on it, and but nowadays with the inundation of information, right? Information doesn't mean intelligence. This is a problem with people think if you have more information, you have more intelligence. No, intelligence is different. It's basically discernment of that information, right? So there's no filters. And with respect to what you said about consistency, so this is very important. I think you can add to this because I want you to add to this. Do you think like people these days tend to move from one thing to another thing, and then like you said, you guys stayed with something. I'm very much of the same philosophy. I keep doing something until basically, it no longer, it reaps any benefits. Okay, now you're forced to change, otherwise you're gonna regress. Give me your take.
Yeah, and the same thing is like we would train. Like there are new things coming out. I'm not saying there's not better stuff than what we used to do, but we know what worked. So if we keep the base of our program the same, now if we find something that's intriguing, the science looks good, or the philosophy of it looks good, you can implement it maybe 5%. If it doesn't work, you still got your 95% base. If it works, you add it to the program for next year. It becomes a part of your 100%, and then you go out looking for other things. So like you said, I used to look in the magazines for nutritional information or whatever it is, and send a letter to or an application to New Zealand to get the information that we wanted. So a month later, you get all the info and in these big journals that they would send to your house, and then you go through them. So nowadays you just pull it up on Idiot Box and you're an idiot because you believe everything you see on there. There's too much information. Like the one that got me, this was again probably 10 or 20 years ago, muscle confusion.
Yeah.
Muscles are smarter than you are. I love all these it's just a way to sell something new. People want something new. It's exciting. It lasts for 2 or 3 months, and then they don't get any results, and they move on to something else. The people who get results are the ones who can sustain the boredom, because I think being successful in anything is a businesswoman here in Canada told me once, is a repetition of mundane tasks. And I agree. Most people aren't willing to do it. It's that simple.
I agree. Day in, day out. And that's, it's funny. That's I would definitely agree with that. Now, give me an idea, like, you mentioned something this earlier, this 5%, 90 and 95%. And so I think kind of alludes to what we're talking here at the same time with respect to, implementing something. And I think, and I want, add to this, I think, this is my take, I think people tend to gravitate at one thing, and then they all, everything kind of revolves around that. as opposed to like pulling back and going back to this idea of wisdom. For example, you're working with Charlie or working with Malcolm. These guys would kind of like, like my math teacher used to say, oh, you stand back and take a cold, hard look at it. Like don't just jump into the problem on the board. Like stand back, analyze what you got to do, and then plan of attack kind of thing. Give me your take.
Yeah, well, again, there are a lot of different ways out there, and I always keep saying, like, I found one that worked for myself, but it's not just me. It worked for everybody in our group. Everybody in our group that we worked when I was with Malcolm did exceedingly well. You got to sort of fit in the program that works for you, because, like I said, Charlie was a very intelligent. I think he went to Stanford, and he didn't, go there for track and field. He went there because he was a very smart guy.
Right.
But his philosophy and program didn't work for me. Like,
right.
With him, we could sit down and we could talk for hours, but our philosophies just didn't gel. So,
right.
I couldn't see me, moving forward with Charlie's type of program. So I went searching other places. Number one, he was a sprint coach and I was a hurdler. So
yeah, that would, what aspects of his philosophy? I mean, without, it's not too personal, but what aspects of his stuff relative to what you felt you needed at that time? What would you say?
Like, and again, love him to death, and I love our group to death. We had a great group of people, but
sure.
Because he was actually a lot of people don't know that he actually went to the Olympics in 1972 in Munich.
That's right.
Got his ass kicked by all the Americans who were supposedly at the time all on drugs.
Right.
So his philosophy and training has always been based off of, you can't be at that level without being on drugs. Well, I never believed that, obviously. My groups that I worked with outside of Charlie never believed that. So a lot of his stuff was geared towards that. And, it wasn't my belief, even though I tried it once with him. But as I said, it wasn't the path that I wanted to go down. It didn't work for me.
Right.
And so that was one of the main philosophies that we had that were different.
So for the most part, because I competed at national level, and I did one international event, and against a professional team in cycling, and the gap between amateur and professional was like huge, and sometimes you kind of always had the thought in your mind, but I always felt that regeneration was a really big part of training that, and one of my profs, Dr. Bob, he said athletes took performance enhancing drugs basically to compensate for inferior training and regeneration. And is there a way, do you think in this day and age, ever since 1988, the whole thing came out, do you think, I think it's possible to do it without pharmacology. I think there's, you can, but the problem is you have an athlete lifestyle. Sometimes you're traveling this and forth. So I think sometimes people want to take the quick route out, not necessarily from who knows their intentions, but the idea is like, well, this is definitely going to help me recover, because it is known. You take something, you still got to train. This one, I think some kids don't, or people fail to realize, the majority of people, you take that stuff, you still got to, in fact, you try to train more, train less, because it allows you to recover more. Right. So it's almost like they think, oh, you just take it, and all of a sudden you're, Mark McKoy running 110-meter hurdles.
Yeah, well, no, that's exactly the thing. People used to say all the time, Ben won because he took steroids. Well, that's because he trained twice as hard because he took the steroids. Wasn't he sitting on the couch drinking a beer and run out there, run a world record? It doesn't work that way. But in saying that, it also has its downside. Like, for example, the one year that I decided to work with Ben and Charlie and those guys, I tore my Achilles tendon. So wow. I was, it was detrimental to me. Everybody I've trained with since then doesn't use performance enhancing drugs. I've worked with Donovan, I've worked with Colin, all these guys have won.
Right.
World champions, Olympic champions. They don't use performance enhancing drugs. It's a longer path. That's all. Most people are not willing to, put the time and effort in. So there's two ways you get to the same point. One's just a lot more work, a lot harder, but it's also a lot safer.
Right. Very. Yeah. Well said there. So just go back there a little bit with you had an Achilles injury. Was it a complete rupture? Was it a partial tear? What was it?
It was partially torn, very inflamed. In '88, I was getting cortisone shots in my Achilles every 6 weeks.
Wow.
So again, things that people don't know. I had a cortisone shot in Seoul right before I started competing. I could barely walk. Then I had an operation right after Seoul. So
okay.
I was out for 2 years right after Seoul because they had to go in, clean it up. It didn't completely rupture, luckily, but I said there was a lot of damage, a lot of inflammation. I had to go and get it operated on. But at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm retired. I'm not ever going to compete again. So I didn't care. But
right.
I decided to make a comeback, and it took me 18 months to recover from that surgery.
18 months. And who was obviously you must have did a multiple of different things, but what were the kind of the key things can you share with us? You did?
Well, number one, once I knew I couldn't do any damage to it, just worked through it. It was painful. I remember he's gone now too. I'm not sure if you know him. Remember Morris Zupkovic?
Yeah, he passed away. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, I used to work with Ben and Charlie. No.
Right. Yeah. He was awesome. I used to go to him every day. He had not the very first, but first we knew of cold laser therapy.
Right.
He used to have in his office. I used to go down there daily, and he would treat me, didn't charge me at all. From there, I went to train with Colin in England, and he actually gave me a portable machine to take with me, free of charge. And every time after training every day, when I'm not training, I had that laser machine on my foot. And my first ex-wife, I got two of them. I'm not good in that department.
We're all learning.
She was East German, and she massaged it every single day. So it recovered really well. So the combination of, again, the laser that Morris gave me and the massage, and I said it took a long time, but 18 months later, it was 100%.
Right. Wow. And you ended up winning 1992, right?
Seems to have worked, huh?
I guess so, eh? Wow. That's a pretty good. That's a story in itself. Comeback time.
I like the comeback story. I like challenge and adversity. That's what drives me.
I can see that. Yeah. Well, you have to be. I think if you're gonna be a competitive athlete, I think you have to sort of embrace competition and challenge. That's the whole idea behind being an athlete, right? And it transcends in your life later on too, for sure. So give me an idea. Like, did you do any sort of on a typical when you're competing? Let's say in the United States or in Wales, right? Did you guys have a lot of regeneration services? Did you have like access to massage therapy? Was it something that you kind of later on picked up? Or
so when I was in the States, they were pretty good with the general stuff. That actually universities and even pro teams for that matter, their medical system and staff is not that good. I don't know, maybe low end of the barrel or bottom of the barrel for these guys, but it would be like, hot, cold, sauna, cold pools, just your regular stuff like that. There wasn't much in the way of massage because, quite frankly, it costs too much. It costs a lot more. Now, here's the thing I think is the biggest thing ever. And again, lucky to be training with Colin, lucky to be in England at the right time, at the right place at the right time. We had what I consider to be the best massage therapist in the universe. Forget the planet. He was amazing.
What was his name? If you want to give a plug out.
Mark Zambada.
Zambada.
Yeah, he worked for Colin. Colin and Linford hired him. And the first time I met him, he wasn't a very, big, strong. He get the most deep massages you'll ever have. But I'll tell you the difference. Like a lot of people try to mimic him, and they couldn't because a lot of people like deep massage. You got to get into the tissue. But from all the people
sometimes, sure.
Well, exactly. You got to know what you're doing. So from all the people I've heard, is like they'll get in there and it's so painful because this guy was basically massaging our bones through our muscles.
Yeah.
When they get off the table, they're like the next day, oh, I'm so sore because I had this deep massage yesterday. Soon as his hands left your body, there was no pain. You feel like butter. Like everything was just so smooth. So the first time I met him, I was running with Colin. It was in the dark, and cold and wet. It's Wales. And I didn't know him. And he was standing by the fence just watching the runs. And he goes, Mark, come here. And I go, yeah. He goes, why do you run like that? And I thought I was running fine. I've been running my whole life. And the inside the hamstring, can't remember if it's semimembranosus or semitendon. I think it's membranosus.
Okay.
It was always tight. No big deal. It was just tight. Stretch it out and run. I could always feel it. Wasn't going to pull. Nothing. No injury. Just tight. And he goes, you don't straighten out your legs when you run. You're like running like your legs are tight. I'm like, they are tight, but it's how they run. He goes, come here. I was, 5 layers of clothes on because it was cold and wet. And he just did some, what they now call active release on my hamstrings.
Yeah.
Felt like I was floating. Like the tightness that I've had for the last 10 or 15 years was gone.
Wow.
Nobody had seen that, and he didn't even know me. So the point I'm trying to make is 1992 was the only year in my 16-year career that I didn't get injured at all. It makes a difference. When you can continuously train without a break for injury, which, I mean, all sprinters or hurdlers, pull hamstrings or, get little hicks. Nothing that year. This guy was a genius. So,
well, that's a very, very, very profound point you make there, because my big thing is regeneration, and I really feel that before you can implement the training, make sure you got the recovery is set up for it. Yeah, otherwise train less, because that way you can recover and come back the next day. And a good set of hands, man, I tell you, it's worth price in gold. Like, it's funny. Just let me ask you something here, because we talked about this a while ago, and you're mentioning that and it's something that Malcolm Arnold, actually, that's kind of put you on to Malcolm, because Malcolm was able to pinpoint exactly what your problem was, because you're losing an inch every stride. And then you told me that you actually won Barcelona by 39 inches, which makes 39 strides, and you're losing 1 inch per stride. So going back to this idea where your foot was torqued out, the natural tendency is, from what I know, is that then the upper leg tries to come back in to kind of pull that foot back in. So it's just like torque in the knee, which would somewhat explain some of your inner tightness in that hamstring, right? And did this foot, did he recognize this after Malcolm? I mean, were you still had that issue, or is it something that he corrected, and then after that, then your foot?
Oh, no. That was basically a mental problem. Is that I just wasn't thinking about it. I would go hurdle without basically not thinking enough, is what Malcolm was saying. It's like, just think about it. So Malcolm corrected it in like 30 seconds. Like it was like, what are you doing? Why don't you just put it down straight? And like, I don't know, never thought about it. So it had nothing to do with it. It wasn't a biomechanical issue.
Okay.
It was a mental issue. It was like, just nobody told me to do that before. I just run over the damn hurdles. Right.
And I know you work as a conditioning coach and a speed coach for some top level athletes right now. Do you do you do some of your massage for your athletes, or do you have somebody else do it? Like, Charlie is one of those guys. Like, I remember he was telling me when he was working with Super Mike, Mike was, I think, that 18 or something athletes, and Mike's like, I can't do all this. And you gave Charlie a stack of towels, and he gave him a jug of oil, and he says, here, go to it. and Charlie over time picked up a lot of techniques that, and obviously then working with Valdemar, which brought him to another level. Give me your take on that. Like,
Yeah, I used to do all of my athletes way back. I don't do it anymore because it's just too time consuming.
Right.
And
yeah.
It takes too much energy. Like
it does.
You want a massage and you want go see a massage therapist, whatever you need to do, a therapist, and come back and I'll do the training, because it was just too much. But I did learn, because we spent so much time with Mark, myself and Colin, and he's working on this 2-3 hours a day sometimes, and I'm watching when we're talking, and he's watching me. That in Barcelona, Colin actually got injured. He's told the story. I'm not sure if your viewers know that. Is he pulled a muscle in his back in the quarterfinals?
Wow.
Otherwise, he would have kicked my ass. Okay, who are we kidding? Colin was the #1 hurdler in the world that year, and he pulled a muscle from his own fault because he was too cocky, and he said it in many interviews before. So I'm not cussing him out for this.
Right.
So right before the final, and Britain has way more therapists than we did at the Olympics, and they had all the tents set up at the warm-up track. There was like 10 of them there, and Colin wouldn't let any of them touch him. I was working on my biggest competitor's back half an hour before we were running the final. They were looking at each like, what is he doing? Like,
you were working on Colin.
I was working on Colin. I learned so much from Mark that he didn't trust anybody else, and I didn't trust anybody else. Nobody else was touching us but us. So
hey.
I learned so much from being around Mark, because he was with us for years after that we did each other's therapy.
It's interesting you say that. Which really lends to the point where sometimes it's not necessarily this. Not taking you down here, but it's not necessarily the best skilled hands. But if that person the person who's receiving that feels that complete trust,
yeah,
I think there's a lot to that. And you may not have the best. And let's just say you
right.
don't have the greatest. But let's just but the fact that his energy allowed he said, yeah, I know, I trust this guy. I know he's not going to hurt me. And I think that's a real key point there, because you go, like you said, you would go to another massage therapist, and the guy would beat the crap out of you, and then you'd feel sore for the next 3 days. But then you go to Mark, and you felt, yeah, he didn't hurt me. And so I think it's like Colin's like, yeah, this guy's not going to hurt me. Whereas if I go to the other people, I don't know. There's a bit of ambivalence, and this is really a big thing when you're doing regeneration work. I feel is that you really have to get that trust before you actually can put your hands on that person.
Yeah. Well, it also helps. I'm sure the neurological response, I don't know what it is, but the muscles just relax more, because, like you said, you're in an environment where I can relax.
If the mind's relaxed, you're not feeling threat. You're not going to put that subconscious guard up.
Exactly.
You're less tense. The person, because every time it's like I work as a osteopath, and I do some structural body work, and one of the areas that I really kind of, even though it may show up in my assessment, I will actually wait a couple of sessions into my work before I'll actually do it. And that's right up into the origin of where the hamstrings and the adductors make their attachment. It's called the ramus. It's on the inside of the sit bone there. And that area, I've had work done on it when I was learning my stuff. It feels like a hot poker. And so I know that what it feels like. And I kind of let the person get used to me doing my work, do the other stuff, and then I'll wait. And then even though it may show up, I'll say, I'll just wait a couple sessions and I'll get into it then. By that time, they're more relaxed. Like you said, you feel this person's not going to hurt you. And if they do cause a little bit of discomfort, they know the intention behind it. It's not like they will try to relax more.
Makes a big difference.
Makes a big difference. Makes a huge difference, right? Yeah. So, moving on a bit here, give me your take on monitoring. In the past, what you did, college, like for example, then you worked with Malcolm, and then, what you think currently now, because I know I seen you on the Instagram, by the way. I do watch your Instagram, so yeah, I like them. It's obviously not, for me, it's, I like listening to people, a bit biased, but I like listening to people who have very similar sort of thinking. And I think it's, and what you're espousing on these Instagram things, I think is really good. It's kind of what people need to hear. They don't need to hear complexity. They need to hear simplicity. And if you just do a few basic things, really, truly just let it evolve. But going back to monitoring, give me your take, what you did in college, if you did any, and then going forward, and then what you think now, because I watch your Instagram, I know you got that sleep thing on your, it's your
ring.
I think your right finger, your index finger there, and then or the left index finger, and then I think you got the watch. Yeah, you got that. So give me your take.
So again, I use it because I'm at a stage where I'm sort of seeing what's happening as I do different things and experiment with different things, and seeing how I can find another 5% for all these athletes or anybody who's trying to get better health. I think they're overused by athletes, from what I've seen. Like a lot of my athletes use the Whoop because I can monitor. It's more for me, not for them.
Right.
The first thing, they get up in the morning and they check, how's my recovery, how's my sleep, how's my HRV, how's my heart rate, all these things. Like, and if it's bad, it blows their mind. Like, okay, I'm gonna have a shitty session today because my recovery is terrible. And like, no, that's not what it's for. It's a gauge and a guide, and if you know how to use these things properly, it can help. But I just think they're so much overused. We never used anything. We didn't even no heart rate, no anything. It's just like, you feel good, all right, go for it. You don't feel good today, take it easy in case you pull something. Like there was no tracking of anything. I didn't have any gauges, gadgets, or anything back in the day, from college all the way through to the Olympics.
Really? I mean, the coach never asked, "Hey, Mark, how do you feel today?"
that was the gauge.
That was the gauge, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay, let's go."
one step further is it's something. I guess once you get to know the coach, or the coach gets to know the athlete, it's how you answer. It's like, oh, I feel terrible. Doesn't like if the way you say it. It's like, doesn't matter. You're going to go balls to the wall anyway. So,
right.
It's not just what comes out of your mouth; it's your actions and your body movements as well.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a place for them. I just think you have to know, just like anything else. You don't just go out and buy one, put it on, and say, okay, today I'm going to go hard, and today I'm not. And that's we like to be simplistic, but that's a little too simplistic. I think people are looking for, people are always looking for the Band-Aid, the quick fix. So they, if I use this, I can get my training better. But, you have to do some work and do some reading and some research. Okay, how do I use this effectively? Not just take everything it says verbatim.
And that's a very key point. I remember training back in the day, and we used to use. I was one of the probably first people to use a heart rate monitor to train. And back in the day, we had the Seiko, and it was a wired transmitter that you had to wear, and you had an armband, and it would go to your chest, had a chest strap, and then you would have these two little electrodes on there, so that it would actually go to the watch, like a wire to the watch, and it would tell you your heart rate. And this is based on the work by Paul Coachley. He was a trainer for Greg LeMond, Bernard Hinault, so Levy Claire. That's when that team was doing really well in the Tour. And part of it was Paul Coachley was a Swiss cyclist that became a director sportif for the Levy Claire team. And he imparted this knowledge on LeMond, and LeMond wrote his book, and that's when I got a hold of that. And that's when I went out and got the Seiko heart rate monitor. But I remember using it, and some days, like, you want to do an interval, and based on that equation, 220 minus your age. Okay, well, this is your, but your max. Like, this is where I think technology, you have to really kind of put things in context, right? If I went by that, and this is what I did, I say, okay, A plus B equals C. Some days I couldn't get to my max heart rate, even though I'm going balls to the wall. I couldn't get it, and because my heart muscle was tired. And then the other thing too was, occasionally, sometimes you would get a false reading from the machine, and so you would have to So this is where I think sometimes what happens is that you, like you said, this reliance on technology too much. The athlete relies too much on the outward, as opposed to relying on the inward intuitive knowledge of what their body's actually saying. What do you think of that?
I think it comes down to what you hear about the art and science of coaching. I'm sure we've both taken those courses back at York University way back in the day.
Yes.
And there's both important, but there's too much science and not enough art. Like you said, when you're working with young athletes, it's hard for them to understand what's going on. Like,
yes,
it's a feeling thing. They need guidance. That's why they have a coach.
Yes.
So it's the coach's job to
impart
and decipher like how
Yes.
that athlete's, from what that athlete's saying, how he's moving, to use the science that's there, especially now, for that athlete because they're not old enough to understand it. That's why, the brain's not developed till you're 25. That's why insurance goes down. Most of these athletes are, 18 to 22. Even though they think they know it all, they cognitively they just can't understand what's going on. So that's the importance of having a coach, especially in those younger ages and those of their career.
Right. So do you when you work with your athletes or your clients? I mean, we're somewhat in the same business to a certain degree, but I in the warm up, I am when they come in, and I picked some of these things up from Charlie. He would ask, and this is what I hear from Ben. Ben would tell me, or Charlie would ask you, "How you doing today?" And you kind of engage the conversation. And he's like you said, like he'd look at your responses, like what kind of like with your, and then he would watch you warm up. And I remember one time, because we used to go to York, and Ben used to come there strolling around 11 o'clock, and we used to have a spare, so I used to eat my lunch up there and up in the gallery there, and you get a free show watching Ben work out. And I remember one time he did his warm up. He'd get his massage from Valdemar about a half hour, and then he'd go do a warm up laps, and then he would start progressively getting into his drills. And I remember Charlie's watching all this, and after I thought, well, okay, we're going to be here for a good 2 hours. It's good. We get some entertainment while we're watching while we're eating our lunch. And within about, let's say 30, 40 minutes, they basically packed up and left. I'm like, hey, I paid for this. What's going on here? And I asked him one time when I was working with him, I said, Ben, I don't think you remember this, but why would you have left so early? Like, what was, he says, because Charlie saw something in my warm up. And then, or Valdemar basically would, tell Charlie the status of the muscles as he was working on them prior to the warm up. And then also he would, listen to the footsteps. And if the contact time was too heavy, right, and he would just, by the sound, Charlie would know this.
Yeah.
And then he would terminate. He said, no, we're not doing speed today. We're just going to do something. We're going to take a day off. Yeah. And so that's what I said. Wow. So, I mean, how'd you know that? It's like well, this is again going back to sort of like, do you use this kind of stuff? I mean, with your experience, I mean, you must look at your athletes and say, okay, yeah, you know what, today, today's a recovery workout. It's sauna. Yeah. Give me your take.
It's just, like you said, it's just experience. And I get it because one, I've seen it for all these years, but I've done it. And speaking of listening, is so important. People always like just watching. I used to do this drill where we film everything when I was in Britain training, all of our hurdle drills, and I sit down with Colin and we'd go over things that were good, things were bad, things that need to be corrected. But at nighttime, what I would do is I'd turn off the video portion and just listen to Colin's footsteps, because he had the quickest feet and you can hear it. You can hear when he's running fast and you can hear when he's not running fast. And it's, it's just learn through, years and years and years of doing and seeing. So now I can tell with my athletes if they come in and they're flat, and it's like, you're just not going to push it. You're still going to work hard. There's still workout to do. But you just say, instead of this, you're doing this, because you're flat, you're not moving, and then feedback from them. This is tight, my back, my whatever, and shouldn't be out partying last night, but well, we don't want to get hurt, so we'll change it. But so it's strictly, I think, just years of. I said I'm luckier than most when it comes to like personal trainers or whatever. That a lot of them go to school and they study and know it, and they got master's degrees in physiology, but they've never done it. So I think I talked about this a little bit before. It's like if you have all that knowledge, there's one thing to have all the knowledge, and there's the experience of actually feeling what that feels like. And that's a huge, huge difference.
It is. You can, and it kind of lends to this idea right now. I find there's a cult of science-ism as opposed to science. And basically, like, you look at a research paper and say, oh, okay, this happens. And so then we have to apply it now. I mean, and the experience is like you said, this experience is telling you, no, okay, you can't just apply that. And going back to what we said earlier, about this 5%, like how much of that is going to actually give me, and for the amount of effort and time I put into something, is that going to give me an additional couple of percent? Otherwise, I need to put my eggs in another basket. And going back to this idea of general training, which leads me to this other question. What's your take? I mean, I know where Ben trained, and I used to go there. Compared, maybe I'm not sure if facilities were like down in the States. I'm assuming they were pretty good at that time, but definitely not nowhere near what they were at York. Where I'm not sure what you trained in the UK in terms of how simplistic the facility is compared to. I mean, you go to a modern gym now, like an athletic gym, let's say a college gym, and it is just like Eleiko. It's I'm not doing a plug for Eleiko here, by the way. It could be Sorinex. It could be it's got everything known to man. But yet, you guys, in my opinion, like working with Ben and working with some other athletes, it's not the facility. It was the coach and the people in the facility that made it. And what's your take on that?
100%. Like you said, you've been in the York facility that we used to train in. The weight room, about as big as your broom closet.
And just to kind of remind the readers here, give me an idea of the weight room, because you and I what it looks like, but give the viewer listeners, like when you walked in the track center and then you went to your left, you had the universal on the outside, but give me an idea of what was inside the weight room.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even a weight room really. It was just an empty room. It had a bench. It had an incline, and they were talking about a shaky old one. I'm not talking about these nice solid ones that you see now.
That's right.
One cage. But in all, you know what? To give it its dues, it was probably one of the only places that had a platform to do Olympic.
That's right. Yeah, and you had a cage there, and that cage is still hanging in, and the bars. When you pull out the spotter bars. Some of those spotter bars are still bent. They haven't replaced them, I think. So,
yeah. So back to your point, what kills me, when you go to the States and they have these. I mean, if you've ever been to the weight room in Texas, it's a size. They actually, when I was there training with Donovan, the year later they took down the track. They ripped it up to put the weight room for the football team. It was the size of the track.
Wow.
So that's how big it was. That was just. So they have phenomenal facilities, but high performance is not a facility. And that's what, these kids go into these places now that are really decked out with everything and they're beautiful. And if they go from there to somewhere else, it's not quite as nice. They're like, oh, I can't train in here. It doesn't have this, doesn't have that. Wales was Wales. So if you picture, we used to go in, there was two places, but one of the places we used was underneath a stadium. So the stairs go down, so it's on an angle like that.
Right.
So it's like barely in there. One rusty bar, and it's not a Eleiko. So Eleiko, they roll nice and easy. So when you're doing a clean, it feels so smooth. This was rusty. Yes. All the weights on the bar turned with you.
There's your functional training right there. Maybe Eleiko will start making rusty bars now. I don't know.
And there was, just one of them with metal weights. So they're like, and you drop metal weights on concrete. There was no platforms. So it was just talking about the basics. It's like Rocky, lifting up rocks and trees outside. It was basic. High performance is in the mind, not in the facility.
I agree. And you must have did this one. I think a lot of times people underestimate a few exercises, like medicine ball, just using the medicine ball. I know now they got every different weight of medicine ball underneath the sun, all the way from I think 200 pounds to these, like the tiny ones, like, for pitchers and kind of stuff. But, I think, from what I remember, Ben and those guys only used like a 4 maybe and then a 5 kg ball, and that was it. And basically, and this is the guy who was hauling up like 475 for 3 before Seoul. So he's using like a 5 kg ball. So give me your take on using medicine balls.
Same thing. It's like it's very dynamic. It's like we move. Talking about functional training. They again come up with names. We got it's one thing to be able to squat 5, 6, 700 pounds, but there's a lot of big, strong guys in the gym that can't put one foot in front of the other. We need to be dynamic. We need to develop power, and we used to throw a lot of med balls and stuff like that. And they don't have to be heavy. Like I got some guys who'll go from like a 5K to a 20K because look at what I can do. It's like, yeah, but you can't move it now. And you just get hurt. We need to explode and move them fast. It's not about how much weight you can do; it's how fast you can move that weight. So we're sprinters, and most sports are speed oriented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's funny you say moving and the idea of sprinting. I consider these activities to be somewhat of a primordial, innate reality. And going back to the idea, if we were a hunter-gatherer society, you would have to know how to sprint, either chasing something or running away from something.
Yeah.
You would have to know how to throw something. That's a medicine ball. So I think over time and I could be wrong, we sort of migrated from this, obviously from that society, that sort of living standard to industrial to postmodern, and now we're like in front of a computer for 8 hours a day, and then we go back and we spend time in a weight room and we're seated again. And I do a lot of medicine ball work with kids, which kind of lends me into this other next question. Basically, is what's your take on working with kids? I mean, I know there's a trend now, and perhaps maybe these studies were funded by the companies that make the weight room equipment, and so I've seen literally in catalogs where they redesign weight room equipment to fit children, and I'm thinking, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I'm thinking I don't think that's a good idea, because children at a certain age, and you can be more probably attest to this, from age 5 to like age 12, like you really can't develop a lot of stuff, but what you can develop is a lot of different skills, and you can develop a lot of elasticity using implements and stuff like that. Not necessarily a medicine ball, but you can, like throwing, catching, running. These are, and basically comes back to this idea of track and field, gymnastics, being the fundamental, and maybe a team sport or swimming like that, being like the fundamental basics of what we call multilateral development for children. What's your take?
Yeah, well, again, I don't think age has much to do with it. It's like you said, if they're, depending on how young they started with activities,
right?
Some are
very,
very athletic, and their movements. Yes. I have some kids who, they're probably in their early teens now, but been working with them since they were like 6, 7, 8 years old, and they move so, and they're small. They're not big kids. They move so well that you can start introducing weight programs to them, strength programs, I should say. It doesn't have to be weights. There's lots of ways to develop strength.
Yes.
But it depends on the kid. Some of them are very capable, and some of them at 20 years old still can't do it. So it's all a matter of their mobility, their ability, their how fast they pick things up. And then I think that this is where the art comes in from coaching. Is like, okay, well, you guys are both 15 years old. You move well. You don't. You can do a squat. You can't. Because if you load an incorrect posture, you're calling for trouble. If the posture's perfect, okay, you can add some load to that. But so specifically, should they be building equipment for kids? Don't need it. You just use anything that anybody else is using. But there's a time and a place, not usually depending on age, but on ability.
Right. And do you think, like, I see kids, like I remember growing up as a kid, and I worked it out on paper one time. I was probably moving about 12 to 15 hours a week, and we'd play, and we're an immigrant family coming to Canada. So, I mean, both my parents worked. So, I mean, there was no hockey and stuff, but we played ball hockey, we played baseball, like, and a lot with the kids I hang around in the neighborhood, their parents were immigrants too, so they didn't have like the formal sort of stuff. But nowadays you come out and you see kids like a 5-year-old kid playing soccer. He's like he's dressed up as he's playing for Man U. Meanwhile, like we're playing like we just have a pickup game of soccer, and then maybe next day we play baseball or we played football. Like, and also a lot of times too, if the guy that had the ball, he couldn't come out because he was grounded because he did something stupid. So now the other guy who had another ball, like a football, that's what you played that day. So but you had a lot of movement overall. But I find kids nowadays tend to be too structured into one particular sport, and maybe they do another one, but it's too formal at an early age. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think kids should play. You played, I played. We've gotten away from that. Doesn't mean that you can't specialize. Like if I'm a hockey player and I'm playing from the time I was 3 and I'm AAA and I'm getting coaching, that's okay. Like, and I think you need, if you want to, that's your goal. Mind you, it's usually the parent's goal, not the kid. But anyway, regardless, that's your goal, and you want to structure that program for them. As long as the kid's having fun and, the kid's the one getting up going, take me here. I want to do this hockey training. I want to do whatever it is. But you still got to have the other stuff in place because you need the diversity, the body, the brain. I used to, one of the things I did, I remember as a kid, we used to just have this big field, and it was, these little, I don't know what the sheds or houses on this field. And we'd run around and we'd climb up on top of the house, which was like a 1-story house, and jump off onto the floor.
TheSystem.ca podcast disclaimer. We're not here to tell you that we know everything. We're just here to present possibilities. The information presented is by no way intended as medical advice or as a substitute for medical counseling. The information should be used in conjunction with the guidance and care of your physician. Consult your physician before beginning this program, as you would with any other exercise and nutrition program. If you choose not to obtain consent of your physician and or work with your physician throughout the duration of your time using the recommendations given, you are agreeing to accept full responsibility for your actions. By continuing, you recognize that despite all precautions on the part of the system, the art and science of coaching, there are risks of injuries or illness which can occur because of your use of the aforementioned information, and you expressly assume risks and waive, relinquish, and release any claim which you have against the system, the art and science of coaching, or any of its affiliates as a result of any future physical or illness incurred in connection with or as a result of the use or misuse of this information given. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or any other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the system, the art and science of coaching, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. If you like the content, please hit the subscribe button. Check out TheSystem.ca for more information on services and more content like this, and also products. Take care.